Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to dive into Jack and Tu Tien's very first night with baby Anna in the hospital, when what they thought would be a peaceful, happy time suddenly turns into panic, tears, baby blues, and a beautiful moment of 3 generations learning how to be a family. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. The first night after baby Anna's birth didn't feel peaceful at all. The hospital room was dim, lit by a single warm lamp. Jack sat on a narrow chair pulled close to the bed, one hand gripping the rail, the other rubbing his tired eyes. For the first time all day, he let himself believe they might finally get a moment to breathe. On the bed, Tu Tien lay half-reclined against a pile of pillows, hair messy, hospital gown creased. Her body still throbbed from surgery. Every small adjustment sent a deep ache through her abdomen. Anna, their tiny daughter, lay in the crook of her arm, wrapped in a white blanket, cheek resting against her mother's chest. For a few precious minutes, the only sound in the room was the soft rhythm of her breathing. "She's so small," Jack whispered, leaning in as if even his voice might break her. "I still can't believe she's real." Tu Tien managed a tired smile. "You've said that at least 5 times, she murmured. If she understood, she'd be rolling her eyes already. "I don't care," he said. "I'll probably say it every day for the rest of my life." Then Anna's face scrunched up. A tiny wrinkle formed between her brows. Her mouth opened, and a sharp cry split the silence. The sound was so sudden that both of them jumped. It was shocking how such a small body could fill the room with that much noise. "Oh no, what's wrong?" Tu Tien whispered, tightening her hold. She shifted Anna a little higher and tried to offer her breast the way the nurse had shown them. Instead of calming down, Anna turned her head away and cried louder, fists flailing, legs kicking under the blanket. Jack shot to his feet so quickly, his chair scraped across the floor. "Is she hungry? Is she cold? Does she need a change?" He blurted, panic rising with every question. "Should I call the nurse?" "I don't know," Tu Tien admitted, her voice already shaking. They said feeding her would help, but she won't. She won't latch." She tried again, tilting Anna's head gently, bringing her closer, then pulling her back a little. Every movement made her stitches burn, and the pain mixed with the sound of Anna's crying until both felt unbearable. The harder she tried, the more clumsy she felt. "Maybe I'm holding her wrong," she stammered. "Maybe she doesn't like me. Maybe I don't have enough milk." Jack stood beside the bed, heavy with worry. Hey, he said softly. "It's okay. We're still learning. She is too." He brushed a hand along Anna's back, whispering her name, but the tiny body only arched and wailed louder. Suddenly, Anna sputtered and spit up a little milk onto Tu Tien's gown. The warm wetness spread quickly across the thin fabric. For a second, both parents froze. "Jack!" Tu Tien gasped, staring at the stain as if it were something dangerous. "Is she sick? Why is she doing that?" He swallowed hard. Fear flared in his chest, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "The nurse said babies spit up sometimes, remember?" He replied. "It doesn't mean she's sick. Maybe we should just hold her upright. I'll take her." His hands trembled as he reached for their daughter. He had never been so aware of his own size. Big fingers, strong arms, movements that suddenly felt too clumsy for someone so small. Carefully, he slid one hand under Anna's neck and the other under her back, lifting her against his chest. She kept crying, her face red Fists pressing into his shirt, Jack started pacing the short length of the room, bouncing gently the way he'd seen other fathers do. "Shh, it's okay," he murmured, voice low and uneven. "Dad's got you. You're safe. We're right here, little one." On the bed, Tu Tien watched through stinging eyes. Her heart pulled in two directions at once. Toward Anna, desperate to make the crying stop, and toward Jack, who was trying so hard to look calm. Under all of it, her own pain pulsed steadily, reminding her how weak her body still was. Minutes stretched. Anna's cries rose and fell, quieting just long enough to give them hope, then exploding again into full, desperate screams. Jack tried everything he could think of, swaying side to side, patting her back, humming a lullaby he barely remembered. Each trick worked for a few seconds, then failed. "I don't get it," he finally admitted, glancing down at her tear-streaked face. "What if we're doing everything wrong? What if she's trying to tell us something and we just can't understand?" Tu Tien pressed the heel of her hand against her eyes. "Of course we're doing it wrong," she choked out. "We've never done this before, and she's the one suffering because of us." Jack turned to her quickly. "Don't say that. You carried her for 9 months. You went through surgery today. That's not doing it wrong." "Then why can't I even feed her?" she cried, her voice cracking. "What kind of mother can't do the most basic thing?" The words landed between them like a stone. For a moment, even Anna's crying seemed quieter than the hurt in her voice. Jack opened his mouth, desperate to answer, but nothing came out. Anna wailed again, as if echoing her mother's frustration. "I'm sorry," Tu Tien whispered to her daughter, reaching out with shaking fingers. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I'm doing." All day she had been holding herself together, through the fear in the hospital, through the surgery, through the moment when they heard Anna's first cry and everyone congratulated them. She had smiled for photos, thanked every nurse, told Jack she was fine. Now, with the night pressing in and her baby screaming in someone else's arms, the last bit of strength slipped. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable. Her shoulders shook as she covered her face with one hand, the other gripping the blanket like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "I'm a terrible mother," she sobbed. "Look at her. She's miserable. She won't eat, she won't sleep, she doesn't want me. Maybe I was never meant to be a mom." Jack stood in the middle of the room, Anna trembling against his chest, her cries vibrating through his bones. He had seen Tu Tien cry before, but never like this. This wasn't just tiredness. This was fear and guilt and heartbreak all crashing down at once. Before he could move toward her, a soft, steady voice rose from the corner of the room. "That's enough," Mrs. Loy said gently. "No one in this room is a terrible anything." "That's enough," Mrs. Loy said gently. "Well, no one in this room is a terrible anything." Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through Anna's cries and the heavy air. Until now, she'd stayed near the window, wanting to give the young couple space. But watching her son and daughter-in-law drown in guilt was more than she could stand. She stepped to Jack's side and held out her arms. "Give her to me for a moment." "Mom, you must be exhausted," he began. She lifted one eyebrow. "Do you think I raised you without nights like this? Come on." Something in her calm, teasing tone loosened his shoulders. Carefully, he passed Anna over. The motion was practiced, almost effortless. Mrs. Ly nestled the baby against her shoulder, one hand steady behind the tiny head, the other patting her back in a slow, sure rhythm. She started humming a simple, wordless tune Jack hadn't heard since he was small. Anna kept crying a few seconds longer, then the sobs softened into broken hiccups. Her fists slowly relaxed. "You see?" Mrs. Ly murmured. "She's not angry. She's just new. The world is cold and bright and loud. She's learning how to be here. You two are learning how to be parents. No one is failing." Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. On the bed, Tu Tien wiped at her swollen eyes. "She wouldn't eat," she whispered. "What if she's hungry and I can't give her enough?" Instead of answering directly, Mrs. Ly looked at Jack. "Do you know what you did when you were this size?" she asked. "You screamed all night, refused to sleep anywhere but on my chest, and spat milk all over me at least twice a day. One night I was so tired I sat on the floor and cried harder than you." Jack stared. "You cried?" "Of course I cried," she said simply. "Strong people cry too, especially mothers." A small, shaky laugh escaped Tu Tien. "I thought I was the worst mother in the world," Mrs. Ly went on. "But somehow we figured it out. You grew up. You sleep too much now. So don't you dare tell yourself you're a bad mother after one hard night," she added, turning to Tu Tien. "Tonight you became a mom. It doesn't mean you magically know everything. It just means you start learning." The words settled over the room like a warm blanket. A soft knock sounded at the door. A nurse walked in with a clipboard, eyes immediately taking in the tear-stained faces, the calmer baby on Grandma's shoulder. "First night?" she asked quietly. Jack gave a tired half-laugh. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled with understanding. "I see this a lot. May I check on you?" She moved gently, taking Tu Tien's blood pressure, asking about her pain, glancing at the crumpled tissues. "You've been crying a lot?" she asked softly. Embarrassed, Tu Tien nodded. "I feel scared and sad and guilty," she admitted. "I know I should be happy, but I can't stop crying. What's wrong with me?" "There's nothing wrong with you," the nurse said firmly. "Your hormones are changing fast. You had surgery. You're exhausted. Many mothers feel this way in the first days. We call it the baby blues. It's very common." "Baby blues," Jack repeated under his breath, as if filing the words away. The nurse nodded. "It can make you feel overwhelmed and convinced you're not a good mom. But you are not failing. You just need rest, food, and support." She looked at Jack and Mrs. Ly. "She needs gentle help right now. No blaming, no, you should have done this. Just love." "We can do that," Jack said quietly. "Of course we can," Mrs. Ly added. "We're family." The nurse turned back to Tu Tien. "Do you want to try feeding her again?" she asked. "I'll help you with the position. Sometimes the baby just needs a better angle." Fear flickered across Tu Tien's face, but she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "One more time." Together they lifted the head of the bed and adjusted the pillows. "Moniz," Ly gently passed Anna back, warm and heavy from crying. The nurse guided Tu Tien's arms, showing her how to support the baby's neck and body, how to bring Anna to her instead of hunching forward. "Breathe," the nurse reminded her. "You're both learning." Then Anna turned her head, rooted clumsily, and latched on. The shift was quiet but huge. Her cries faded into soft, steady swallowing, her fists uncurled, her tiny shoulders relaxed. "She's doing it," Tu Tien whispered. a stunned smile breaking through her tears. "She's really doing it." "You're doing it together," the nurse said. "Your body remembers what to do. So does hers." Jack watched, hardly daring to move. The sight of his wife finally feeding their daughter, baby's cheek pressed against her skin, Tu Tien's arm wrapped protectively around that small body, hit him with a wave of emotion he couldn't name. "This is our life now," he thought. "This is real." The nurse finished a few notes on her chart. "If you feel worse or the sadness doesn't lift after a couple of weeks, tell us," she said gently. "For now, you're doing just fine." Then she slipped out, closing the door softly behind her. Time passed more quietly after that. When Anna finally stopped feeding, Jack helped hold her upright until a tiny burp escaped. He laughed under his breath at how proud it made him feel. They settled Anna on Tu Tien's chest, skin to skin. The baby curled into the warmth with a soft sigh, as if she'd found the safest place she knew. The lamp beside the bed cast a pool of golden light over mother and child. Outside the window, the sky began to shift from deep black to soft blue, the first hint of morning. Jack sank into the chair by the bed, every muscle aching, but the panic gone. He watched his wife and daughter breathe in the same slow rhythm, their chests rising and falling almost together. On the other side, Mrs. Ly rested her hands on the rail, eyes full of quiet pride and relief. No one felt the need to talk. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of relief, of gratitude, of a love that didn't need big words. Jack reached out and gently touched Anna's tiny foot through the blanket, feeling the warmth of her skin. "We're going to be tired and confused and make a mess of things," he thought. Not with fear this time, but with a small, steady hope. "But we'll figure it out. Together." In the soft morning light, 3 generations stood watch around one small, sleeping baby. It felt like the beginning of a family. On their first night with newborn Anna, Jack and Tu Tien think the hardest part is over, but the quiet hospital room quickly fills with crying, panic, and doubt. Anna refuses to latch, spits up, and won't settle, while Tu Tien's body aches from surgery and exhaustion until she finally breaks down, believing she's already a bad mother. Jack, clumsy but loving, tries everything to calm the baby and comfort his wife, only to feel just as helpless. Seeing them struggle, Mrs. Ly gently steps in, sharing memories of Jack as a difficult newborn and reminding them that no parent starts out perfect. A kind nurse then explains baby blues and shows Tu Tien how to feed Anna properly. By early morning, Anna sleeps peacefully on her mother's chest as 3 generations watch over her and breathe in the new happiness together.